The confirmation didn't arrive through whispers or leaks. It arrived with a stamp of authority that instantly silenced doubt. Netflix had officially confirmed the release of a documentary centered on the lives of Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson, and within minutes, the reaction was explosive. Fans weren't just surprised, they were stunned by what this decision implied. For years, both Jamie and Dakota had built reputations around distance. Interviews stayed professional, personal questions were gently redirected, and private lives remained firmly out of reach. That consistency made this announcement feel almost unreal. A Netflix documentary isn't a casual project, it's an invitation into moments that were never meant for headlines. The shock didn't come from the idea of a documentary itself. It came from the subject matter. This wasn't a behind-the-scenes featurette or a promotional tie-in for a new film. Netflix described it as a project focused on life, not career highlights. That distinction immediately shifted the conversation from excitement to curiosity, and then to unease. Social media reacted in waves. First came disbelief, then speculation, then intense scrutiny of every word used in the announcement. Fans asked the same question in different ways. Why now? What changed after years of silence and carefully maintained boundaries? When people who value privacy this fiercely say yes to Netflix, it suggests a story they are ready to tell on their own terms. Netflix's involvement changed the tone instantly. Unlike tabloid coverage or talk show anecdotes, a Netflix documentary carries the promise of depth and structure. It implies time spent, trust built, and narratives carefully shaped rather than rushed. For many fans, that raised expectations and anxiety about what might finally be addressed. Early descriptions hinted at an intimate scope, not scandal-driven, not sensationalized, but deeply personal. The language suggested reflection, growth, and moments that shaped who Jamie and Dakota are beyond the roles audiences associate them with. That alone was enough to ignite debate over what viewers were entitled to see. The announcement also forced fans to confront a contradiction. For years, speculation filled the gaps left by silence. Now, the same audience that demanded answers found itself unsure whether it actually wanted them. The idea of seeing behind the curtain felt thrilling and uncomfortable at the same time. Industry insiders were quick to note how unusual this pairing was. Two actors, linked forever by a massive global franchise, choosing to open their lives simultaneously. Not as a couple, not as co-stars, but as individuals whose journeys happened to intersect. That framing felt deliberate, almost defensive against the narratives that had followed them for so long. What made the moment even more striking was the lack of elaboration. Netflix confirmed the project, but details were scarce. No release date, no episode count, no promises about specific revelations. That restraint only intensified speculation, suggesting that the content itself would speak louder than any press tour ever could. Fans began revisiting old interviews with fresh eyes. Statements once dismissed as vague suddenly felt loaded. Comments about growth, pressure, and misunderstanding took on new weight. It became clear that this documentary wasn't emerging out of nowhere. It was the result of years of accumulated tension between public perception and private reality. The phrase, "It's official," echoed everywhere, not because of celebration, but because of finality. Once Netflix commits to telling a story, it becomes part of the cultural record. This wasn't something that could be quietly walked back or reframed later. Whatever was coming would exist permanently, accessible and replayable. What unsettled fans most was the possibility that long-standing assumptions might finally be addressed, or quietly dismantled. The documentary promised context, not confirmation, but context alone can be disruptive. Understanding why people chose silence can be more powerful than learning what they were silent about. As the day progressed, the initial shock gave way to anticipation. Not the loud, impatient kind, but a measured curiosity. People began to realize that this documentary wasn't designed to satisfy gossip. It was designed to reclaim narrative control, to let Jamie and Dakota define their lives without the constant echo of speculation. By nightfall, one thing was undeniable. Netflix hadn't just announced a documentary. It had shifted the balance of power in a story that had been told by outsiders for far too long. And if this was only the beginning, then the most revealing moments weren't behind them. They were still waiting to be seen. Once the excitement settled, a quieter realization began to take hold. A Netflix documentary is never just about access, it's about authorship. By agreeing to participate, Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson weren't inviting curiosity for curiosity's sake. They were choosing to shape how their lives would finally be understood. For years, both actors had lived inside narratives written largely by others. Interviews were clipped, moments were isolated, and assumptions hardened into facts through repetition. Silence, once a shield, slowly became a vacuum. The documentary felt like a response to that imbalance, not a confession, but a correction. What made the decision especially striking was the timing. Neither Jamie nor Dakota was at a career low, desperate for reinvention. On the contrary, both stood at points of stability, where saying nothing would have been the easier choice. Choosing to speak now suggested readiness, not pressure. Sources close to the project hinted that the documentary would avoid sensational structure. Rather than chasing rumors, it would focus on process, how fame reshapes identity, how boundaries are negotiated, and how private lives survive under constant observation. That approach aligned with how both actors had always spoken when they spoke at all. For Jamie, the film reportedly explores the cost of being misread. Roles that blurred into reality, expectations that followed him off set, and the exhaustion of correcting stories he never agreed to tell. The documentary offers him space to exist without character overlays, something fans had rarely been allowed to see. Dakota's arc, by contrast, is framed around choice. Growing up in proximity to fame taught her early how visibility can distort truth. Her sections reportedly examine restraint as an active decision, not an absence. The documentary doesn't present her as elusive, but intentional. The pairing of their stories isn't meant to fuel speculation, but to provide contrast. Two lives intersecting under similar pressure, choosing different strategies to survive it. The film's structure reportedly resists easy conclusions, allowing viewers to sit with complexity rather than chasing neat answers. This is where Netflix becomes more than a distributor. Its documentary format favors patience, context, and emotional continuity. There is no rush to reveal a single shocking moment. Instead, meaning accumulates gradually, reshaping understanding over time. Fans initially hungry for revelations began recalibrating expectations. The promise wasn't exposure, it was perspective. And perspective can be unsettling in its own way. It forces audiences to recognize how much of what they believed was built on projection. Media reaction followed a similar shift. Early headlines leaned into excitement, but analysis soon replaced speculation. Commentators noted how rare it was for two intensely private figures to reclaim narrative ground simultaneously. The documentary wasn't breaking silence, it was reframing it. What remains most compelling is what the project refuses to do. It doesn't aim to end rumors with definitive statements. Instead, it contextualizes why rumors exist at all. By doing so, it asks viewers to examine their role in sustaining them. As anticipation grows, one question keeps resurfacing. Will clarity bring closure, or will it complicate things further? The answer may be both. Understanding often disrupts comfort before it offers peace. In the end, this documentary isn't about revealing secrets. It's about redefining visibility. Jamie and Dakota aren't stepping forward to be decoded, they're stepping forward to be seen on their own terms. And once that perspective is shared, the story surrounding them can never return to what it was before.